All right, crew, here we are with math lesson number 4. So we are going to be looking at decimals that are bigger than 1. Move you out of the way. All right, so you'll remember that when we were working with fractions and we had fractions that were more than 1 full pie or chocolate bar, then we could use a mixed fraction to describe it. So if we had some pies, and most of them were still there. Okay, then we could write a fraction that describes our amount of pie that we have. Okay, so we're looking for a mixed fraction. So in a mixed fraction, we're going to have part of the fraction is going to be a regular number, part of the fraction is going to be the fraction. Okay, the regular number is going to describe the full pies. So we have 2 full pies. And then we need a fraction to describe the leftover amount of pie. So we can cover it, we already have the 2, so now we look just at the fraction. What fraction of a pie is still there? We have 1/2, and we would say that 2 and 1/2. So we've got a main number, which is equal to the number of whole pies, or chocolate bars, or cakes, and we've got the fraction, which represents the extra fraction. Okay, so if that is our mixed fraction, we still need to be able to turn a mixed fraction into a decimal. Okay, so we know that in our decimals, the numbers to the left of the decimal place are whole numbers, and the numbers to the right of the decimal place are less than 1. So we've got the tenths, the hundredths, and the thousands. Okay, so the number to the left of the decimal point, here's our decimal point here, to the left is the whole numbers. How many whole pies? Well, right here it says that we've got 2. So we've got 2 whole pies. So now we just have to put the 1/2 into a decimal. Now, if you remember from previous lessons, 1/2, if we're talking about half of a 10 stick, half of our 10 stick, oh, they're not going to balance very well here. Half of our 10 stick is going to be 5/10. Oh, let's get those out of the way. Okay, so 1/2 is going to be the same thing as 5/10. And we know from consulting our happy little chart here, tenths is the 1 spot beside the decimal point. So we're going to put a 5 in there. So 2 and 1/2 pies. We could also write it as 2.5 pies, or 2.5, whatever else it is we're talking about. Okay, but we've really been talking about cakes a lot lately, now that we've got these other decimals. So we can do the same thing with other decimals. Okay, so we can have our cake, and we can cover up the whole cake. So I'm going to get you to just imagine that underneath are the sample cakes, because I'm not going to have enough. Okay, so let's say we've got 2 full cakes here. We've covered up the whole cake. And we have another cake that we've just covered up a couple of columns and a few extra slices. Okay, so we wanted to turn this one into a decimal. Right, so we look to see, well, first of all, let's try a mixed fraction. So first of all, we look to see how many full cakes. There are 2 full cakes, so the main number is going to be a 2. Then we look to see what fraction we have left. So we know that that's really out of 100, right? We've really just covered up that cake. Okay, so we can count by tens. 10, 20, 21, 22, 23. So we have 23 pieces out of, there's 100 pieces in our cake. So our mixed fraction would be 2 and 23 100ths. Okay, now we want to turn this into a decimal. Again, remember the number to the left of the decimal spot tells you the whole numbers. The numbers to the right tell you the parts that are less than one whole cake. So I put in my decimal point. To the left, we've got 2 whole cakes. So I stick a 2 over here. To the right, I've got 23 hundredths. So hopefully you remember that we could just take that number and write it in here, or we can think of it as 2 tenths and then 3 little hundredths. Okay, so 2.23 is the same thing as the mixed fraction 2 and 23 100ths. Okay, so just a reminder that when they're asking you for a mixed fraction, that's what they're looking for. And if they're asking you for a decimal, that's what it's going to look like. Okay, so let's get rid of those cakes. We're ready for something new. So in your math book, they're going to have the cakes here, and they've got some squares beside it. So let's say we've got one whole cake, and then we're going to cover up 3 strips of the next cake and 2 little pieces of the cake as well. Okay, so they're asking us for the mixed fraction. So the regular number is how many whole cakes. Looks like we've got 1 whole cake. Then this part is how much we've covered out of a whole cake. We know the whole cake's got 100. So we've got 100 on the bottom. So we can count by tens. 10, 20, 30, 31, 32. So we have 1 whole cake and 32 hundredths of another cake. All right, now we got to change that into a decimal. Okay, to the left of our decimal point is the whole cakes. In this case, we've got 1 whole cake. To the right, we've got 3 strips, so we've got 3 tenths and 2 hundredths, or 32 hundredths, which is the same thing as 3 tenths and 2 hundredths. Okay, so 1 and 32 100ths, the decimal would be 1.32. Alrighty, let's try one more for luck. Alright, what if, oh my goodness, we got a lot of cake here. What if we have 1, 2, we'll pile it up there, 3 whole cakes, and then we have 1 extra strip of cake, and 5 more pieces of cake. Alright, so in the mixed fraction, we've got 1, 2, 3 whole cakes, so the number part of our mixed fraction is going to be a nice 3, and we know our one cake has 100 pieces. So out of that 100, we've got 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 100. So our mixed fraction would be 3 and 15 100ths. Put that into a decimal. You need the decimal point. To the left, the whole stuff we've got 3 whole cakes, so that's going to go in here. Then we've got 1 tenth and 5 leftover hundredths, right? Or we've got the 15, but just here after the decimal point, because we know that that is showing us the part that is not a whole cake. Okay, now what if, get rid of that, crash wouldn't need those cakes anyway. Okay, what if we started with a decimal and we then had to go backwards and draw the base 10 model? Okay, why don't we start with 2.45. I've got 2.45 cakes, or I'd like to, anyway. Okay, so this part tells me I need 2 whole cakes, right? Or if I'm drawing them, right, you can just draw the squares. There's our 2 whole cakes. Okay, then I need 4/10 of a cake. There we go. And if we're drawing them, remember, you can just draw some nice little sticks here. Okay, there's our 4/10, and then we need 5/100. There we go, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we can just draw those as little dots. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There we go. So we've taken our 2.45 and we have turned it into base 10 blocks, or we could turn it into a mixed fraction. I've got 2 full cakes and I've got 45 100ths, right? 45 right there, 45 100ths of another cake. All right, hopefully that is clear as mud. Remember, anytime you're stuck on math, you can always just contact me and we can arrange a Skype or a Zoom math class. Okay, here we are. So for math lesson number 4, the pages you need to do, if you have a blue math book, you're going to do page 270. If you have a green math book, you're going to do page 228. All right, hope that all goes well. Let me know if you need any help. Take care.